He and Mu were momentarily speechless. He had seen thick-skinned people, but he had never seen someone so thick-skinned. Yi Xian suddenly laughed and said, "Miss, are you a demon beast?" Mu nodded, "I'm from the demon race." Yi Xian glanced at Mu, then smiled and said, "Miss, you're so beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful demon." Xiao Ta. Mu glanced at Yi Xian. "Thank you, young Master Yi, for your praise." Young Master Ye's attitude towards the demon race surprised me. Yi Xian laughed. "Whether it's the demon race or the human race, in my opinion, we are all creatures of this universe. If we can coexist peacefully, that would be great." Mu smiled and said, "It's very difficult." Yi Xian nodded, "It's indeed very difficult. But, miss, this time it seems like it's your demon beast race causing trouble." Mu smiled slightly, "It's not that simple." Yi Xian frowned, "What do you mean?" Mu looked at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, are you here to help the Yuan realm?" Yi Xian said, "I'm here to help the Yi race. My father has a good relationship with the Yi race." After a moment of silence, Mu said, "Young Master Yi, can you give up on meddling in the Yuan realm's matters?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I'm afraid not." Mu shook her head, "Young Master Yi, I know your background isn't simple, but the Yuan realm's matters are far from as simple as you think. Especially this Yi race, they—" At this point she didn't continue speaking. Yi Xian frowned slightly, "What are you trying to say?" Mu smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, why don't you go to my demon beast race first, then you can decide if you want to meddle in the Yi race's matters, how about it?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded, "Sure." Mu smiled slightly, "Young Master Yi, follow me?" With that she turned and left. Yi Xian followed. Yi Xian followed Mu directly to the depths of the demon beast mountain range. On the way, Yi Xian turned to look in the direction of the Great Wall of Heaven mountain range and said, "You've already started attacking the Great Wall?" Mu smiled and said, "Just for fun." Yi Xian glanced at Mu and didn't say anything. Under Mu's lead, the two of them came to a stone city. Mu brought Yi Xian to a large hall, and at this moment, there were many demon and beast race powerhouses gathered in the hall. When they saw Mu bring a human in, all the demon and beast race powerhouses were stunned. Yi Xian took a look inside the hall and very quickly, his expression darkened. The beast and demon race powerhouses in the hall were all at least at the mortal severing realm. And in the entire hall, there were a total of 76 mortal severing realm powerhouses from the demon race and beast race. Moreover, these mortal severing realm powerhouses all had mortal bodies. In other words, humans needed 3 mortal severing realm powerhouses to fight against a demon beast with a mortal body. That was a bit of a crushing defeat. "Yi Xian," Yi Yuan said again, "Yi He girl said that you can easily kill those above the mortal realm. You can do it, right?" Yi Xian, at this moment he really wanted to slap himself. "Who asked you to show off?" Chapter 1753. At this moment Yi Xian was extremely helpless. He was truly helpless. A divine level spring of eternal life. He knew very well what it meant that countless forces would go crazy for it. How could he defend it? His father had actually asked him to come alone. That was a trap. Was he really his own son? He felt that it was necessary to do a paternity test. Damn it. This was too much of a trap. But now he wanted to run away? He really wanted to run away. However, if he ran away, what would happen to the Yi clan? He was slightly displeased if he didn't run away. Why should the good karma that was formed by a father be resolved by his son? Unacceptable. At this moment Yi Yuan smiled bitterly. "Young master, do you not want to care about this?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yi Yuan sighed softly. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "I can understand. If young master wants to leave." Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. "I will not leave." Yi Yuan looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "The good karma that was formed between you and my father is my good karma. I will acknowledge what he did." Hearing this, Yi Yuan immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. He said excitedly, "Thank you, young master." In fact, he also knew what Dao Yi's divine level spring of eternal life meant. An endless amount of trouble. He also wanted to give up. Because he knew that a divine level spring of eternal life was enough to destroy the entire Yi clan. However, because Sword Master Green had promised him that if the divine level spring of eternal life broke through, he could look for him. Therefore he sent someone to look for Sword Master Green. A divine level spring of eternal life could not be guarded by the Yi clan without a powerful backer. In fact, he himself did not expect that his actions would form a good karma with Sword Master Green and the little white fellow. And this good karma brought too many benefits to the Yi clan. Because the little white fellow did not just give the Yi clan one divine level spring of eternal life. She gave 4 divine level springs of eternal life many benefits. Now, one of them was about to break through, which meant that the other 3 might break through as well. Once the Yi clan had 4 divine level springs of eternal life, meanwhile Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "Senior Yi Yuan, I'm a little curious about what you gave to Whitey." Yi Yuan hesitated for a moment, then said, "This is an ancestral spirit stone passed down by my Yi clan's ancestors. It contains extremely pure eternal qi." Then he paused and said, "I've never seen the purity of the aura of eternal life." Yi Xian asked, "You don't know what it is?" Yi Yuan shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior Yi Yuan, that ancestral spirit stone should be extremely precious, but you just gave it away." Yi Yuan laughed, "No matter how precious it is, it has no substantial effect on my Yi clan because my Yi clan has studied it for thousands of years and still hasn't been able to figure it out. Since that's the case, why don't we give it away to forge good karma?" Yi Xian smiled. He had to admit that this Yi Yuan was indeed very courageous. Most importantly, Yi Yuan had no ill intentions towards Whitey. At this moment Yi Yuan said in a low voice, "Young master, did you just find out that my Yi clan has a divine level spring of eternal life?" Yi Xian nodded. Yi Yuan asked, "Where did you find out?" Yi Xian said, "The Beast Demon Clan." The Beast Demon Clan. Hearing this, Yi Yuan's face immediately sank. "I've already temporarily stopped it from breaking through and concealed its aura, but I didn't expect it to still fail." Yi Xian said, "That divine level spring of eternal life still hasn't broken through?" Yi Yuan nodded. "If it breaks through, it will definitely cause a great commotion, so I've been telling it to suppress itself." Yi Xian said, "Can you take me to see it?" Yi Yuan nodded, "Of course." After that, he opened his palm and a small black pot appeared in his hand. Yi Xian glanced at the black pot. "It's inside?" Yi Yuan nodded. Yi Xian nodded slightly. "Let's go in and take a look." Yi Yuan brought Yi Xian directly into the black pot. Inside the small pot there was another world. Just entering the small pot, Yi Xian's face suddenly changed. The spiritual energy inside was too dense. At least 10 times denser than outside. Yi Xian turned to look at Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan said in a low voice, "If it breaks through, then the quality of its eternal life qi is at least 20 times higher than the divine level spring of eternal life." 20 times. Yi Xian was silent. In other words, a divine level spring of eternal life was equivalent to dozens of heavenly saint level spring of eternal life, or even more. A divine level spring of eternal life, its value was really immeasurable. At this moment in the lake not far from the two of them, a white dragon suddenly flew out. Boom. The entire lake directly surged. In midair, the white dragon looked down at Yi Xian. Suddenly, it lowered its head and arrived not too far away from Yi Xian's head, and it spoke in a clear voice, "Human, you have Whitey's aura on you." Whitey. Obviously, this white dragon was the divine level spring of eternal life that was about to break through. Yi Xian smiled, "Whitey and I are very very good friends." A trace of excitement flashed through the white dragon's eyes. "Is that so? I'm Whitey's friend as well." "Since you're its friend, then you're my friend as well." Yi Xian roared with laughter, "What's your name?" The white dragon replied, "Ling Chu. Big Brother Sword Master gave it to me." "Your bloodline seems to be similar to Big Brother Sword Master." Yi Yuan smiled, "Ling Chu, this is the young master. He's the Sword Master's son." The Sword Master's son. Ling Chu blinked and then he said, "Big Brother Sword Master sent you to protect me?" Yi Xian nodded and smiled, "Yes." Ling Chu was clearly very happy, and she let out a dragon roar before circling around Yi Xian's head. It didn't take long for her to transform into a ray of white light that descended onto Yi Xian's shoulder. At this moment she transformed into a mini dragon that was only the size of a child's arm. Ling Chu wrapped around Yi Xian's arm and chuckled, "Your Big Brother Sword Master's son, so what should I call you?" Yi Yuan smiled, "Call me young master." However, Ling Chu shook her head, No, young master doesn't sound nice. Why don't I call you Big Brother as well?" Yi Xian roared with laughter, "Sure." Ling Chu chuckled, "Big Brother Yi Xian, who's stronger between you and Big Brother Sword Master?" Yi Xian instinctively said, "Of course it's me." At this point he suddenly stopped. Damn it. Wait, I'm stronger than my father? I can't act cool like this. Yi Xian smiled sheepishly and said, "Of course it's my father." Xiao Ta instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. Damn it. Young master still has some face. At this moment Yi Xian said, I'm just a little bit weaker than my father. Xiao Ta. On Yi Xian's arm, Ling Chu blinked. Big brother Yi Xian is very powerful. Yi Yuan smiled. Young master isn't an ordinary person. He can even instantly kill experts above the mortal severing stage. Yi Xian. Ling Chu turned to look at Yi Xian with eyes filled with admiration. Is that true? Yi Xian hesitated. This. Yi Yuan and Ling Chu were both looking at Yi Xian, especially Ling Chu, whose eyes were filled with even more admiration than Yi He. Seeing the look in Ling Chu's eyes, Yi Xian felt dizzy and said, Of course. What's above the mortal severing stage? It's just one strike. Xiao Ta. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Xian suddenly regretted it. Damn it. I seem to be a little thick-skinned now. At this moment, Yi Yuan suddenly said in a low voice, Young master, this matter isn't that simple, right? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and nodded. It's not simple. Not just the beast demon race but also the divine temple and book hall. Hearing this, Yi Yuan's face instantly turned pale. Divine temple. Book hall. This was a foreign force on the mountain. He hadn't expected that his divine-level spring of eternal life would attract such a force. Yi Xian was just about to speak when Yi Yuan said in a low voice, Young master, I've decided to hand Ling Chu over to you. Yi Xian was stunned and then said, What do you mean? Yi Yuan shook his head. Young master, I'd thought that it was just the beast demon race. Chapter 1754. Yi Yuan had fallen into despair when he found out that the temple and hall of books were involved. He had truly fallen into despair. These two forces were definitely not something they could go against. Not to mention them, even if the three great clans joined forces, they wouldn't be able to go against one of them. Annihilation. He knew that his Yi clan might be annihilated. Yi He and Yi Lin were stunned when they heard Yi Yuan's words. What's going on? Both of them were in a daze. Yi Xian helped Yi Yuan up and smiled. Father promised to protect your Yi clan, so your Yi clan will be fine. Actually, after spending time with Yi Yuan, he realized that Yi Yuan was really a good person. He was a good person indeed. Moreover, he realized that the people that his father befriended were all good people. For example, Shan Qiu, swordsman from the Sword Alliance, and Yi Yuan. Yi Yuan smiled bitterly. Young master, the temple and hall of books? Yi Xian said, I'll do it. Yi Yuan was stunned when he heard that. Yi Xian smiled, I'll do it. Yi Yuan said solemnly, Young master, I don't mean to look down on you and the sword master, but do you know how terrifying the temple and hall of books are? Yi Xian smiled, Do you have any other way besides trusting me? Yi Yuan fell silent. He really didn't have any other way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have sent someone to look for the green shirt sword master. Meanwhile, Ling Chu suddenly said, Big brother Yi Xian, can I break through now? Yi Xian looked at Ling Chu and Ling Chu giggled, I can't hold it in any longer. Yi Xian smiled, If you want to break through, then break through. Hearing this, Ling Chu was extremely excited. Really? Yi Xian nodded, Really? Ling Chu giggled, and then she transformed into a ray of white light that appeared on the surface of a nearby lake. In the next moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from her body. Bang! In an instant, the entire lake started to boil. He had to enter godly trance. As the spirit stopped suppressing it, a powerful wave of spiritual energy suddenly spread throughout the small pot. In the end, the small pot could no longer suppress the spiritual energy, so the spiritual energy spread outside. Outside the Great Wall of Sky Mountain, all the demon beasts turned to look in the direction of Yi Xian and the others. Above the Great Wall, the experts of the Shao clan and the Yuan clan also turned to look in the direction of Yi Xian and the others, their eyes filled with shock. Boom! Right at this moment, a white dragon suddenly soared into the sky, soaring across the horizon. And with the appearance of this white dragon, the spiritual energy of the entire primordial realm actually increased at an alarming rate. God? Yuan Qiu stopped and looked at the white dragon in the distance, his eyes filled with disbelief. Not only Yuan Qiu, all the people and beasts were shocked. He Mu looked at Yi Xian and said, But your surname is Yi. Are you an illegitimate child? Yi Xian was speechless. Now that he thought about it, he hadn't changed his surname yet. But he did not intend to change it. Yi Xian was used to it. In any case, his father didn't care, so why should he? Moreover, no matter what his surname was, wasn't he still his father's son? Or perhaps he should ask his father to change his surname to Yi. Yang? Yi Xian couldn't help but laugh when he thought up to here. Meanwhile, Yuan Qiu suddenly walked over to Yi Xian and Yi Yuan. Yuan Qiu gazed at Yi Yuan and smiled bitterly. Brother Yi Yuan, you've made everyone suffer. Yi Yuan smiled and said, I dare not be dissatisfied. Yuan Xiu spoke in a low voice, "Brother Yi Yuan, this will bring calamity to your Yi family." Yi Yuan nodded and then he gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was about to speak when an old man suddenly appeared out of thin air. As soon as the old man appeared, the expressions of everyone here changed drastically. An expert that was above the paragon mundane realm. The old man glanced at the white dragon, and then he turned to look at He Mu and nodded slightly, "Miss He Mu." He Mu laughed and said, "So it's Hall Master Lin Hai. The Hall Master of the Book Hall." The expressions of everyone here changed when they heard this. The legendary Hall Master of the Book Hall has actually come. The Hall Master of the Book Hall is the strongest, and beneath him are the Hall Masters of the 4 halls. Lin Hai was the Hall Master of the Painting Hall. Lin Hai sized He Mu up and then he smiled, as expected of the most monstrous genius in the history of Sin City. He Mu shook his head and smiled, "You flatter me." Lin Hai smiled, "Miss He Mu, are you here on behalf of Sin City or the Beast Demon race?" He Mu smiled, "What do you think, Hall Master Lin?" Lin Hai fell silent. He Mu continued, "Hall Master Lin, it's actually too early for us to be discussing all of this. Regardless of whether it's the divine rank spring of eternal life or the 12 saint rank springs of eternal life, they don't belong to us yet." The expressions of Yuan Xiu, Xiao Lin, and the others changed when they heard He Mu. Their objective wasn't just the divine rank spring of eternal life, it was their saint rank spring of eternal life as well. Lin Hai glanced at Yi Xian, "Miss He Mu, you mean he's a variable?" He Mu smiled, "Yes. So, it's too early for us to be discussing the ownership of the spring of eternal life." Lin Hai gazed at Yi Xian, "So we have to kill him first, right?" He Mu nodded, "Yes." Lin Hai was about to speak when a Buddhist chant resounded abruptly, "Amit Ba." The expressions of everyone here became solemn once more when they heard this. The divine temple is here. As soon as he finished speaking, a monk appeared not too far away from Yi Xian. The monk had 6 scars on his head, wore a black kasaya, and had a large mole between his brows. The divine temple. Miku. The laws of heaven and earth, it's the legendary supreme laws, supreme laws. Li Xuanqing's entire body was trembling. What kind of existence was a supreme law? That was the existence of the ceiling of this current universe. Even the patriarch of the small grotto heaven was as weak as an ant in front of her, let alone him. Why was this supreme law here? The supreme law was about to speak, but at this moment, the woman in a plain dress suddenly spoke. "He seems to be looking for me." Hearing this, the supreme law's expression instantly changed and she hurriedly bowed. "Senior, such a person isn't worthy of your attention at all." Seeing the supreme law address the woman in a plain dress as senior, Li Xuanqing's face was filled with astonishment. "Senior?" The supreme law was so respectful to this woman? The woman in a plain dress glanced at Li Xianqing. "His target seems to be me." Li Xianqing stared fixedly at the woman in a plain dress. "Who is it?" The woman in a plain dress shook her head. "Why do you all like to ask such boring questions?" As she spoke, she looked at the supreme law. "Do you know where that small grotto heaven is?" The supreme law nodded. The woman in a plain dress said, "Point me in a direction." Yi Xian was speechless. The supreme law hesitated for a moment, and then pointed to the right. The woman in a plain dress opened her palm, and a sword appeared in her hand. She was just about to attack when she seemed to have thought of something, and her brows furrowed. A short moment later she turned to look at Yi Xian. "I need some opponents to temper myself. Are you confident?" Yi Xian hesitated for a moment, and then he turned to look at the supreme law. "Is this small grotto heaven very strong?" The supreme law glanced at Yi Xian. "It's not especially strong." Yi Xian nodded slightly and then he smiled. "I'm confident." Within the world prison pagoda, Xiao Ta sighed softly in his heart. "Young lord, this idiot has confidence, my ass. That person before us is the ceiling of the current universe. Is his being weak the same as his being weak?" The woman in a plain dress nodded slightly when she heard Yi Xian. "Then I'll deal with him myself." As she spoke, she looked at Li Xianqing. The latter said fiercely, "Who exactly is it?" The woman in a plain dress waved her hand casually. Bang! Li Xuanqing's entire body trembled violently, and then his body vanished. At this moment she looked at Yi Xian. "Absorb him." Yi Xian was stunned, and then he hurriedly let go of the soul-suppressing sword in his hand. The soul-suppressing sword transformed into a black ray of light and entered Li Xuanqing's body. Bang! Li Xuanqing's entire body trembled violently, and his soul gradually started to vanish swiftly. It was absorbed by the soul-suppressing sword. However, because his soul was very strong, the soul-suppressing sword was actually unable to absorb it immediately. Li Xuanqing wanted to resist, but he couldn't resist at all. Yi Xian smiled, but he had no intention of attacking. He crossed his arms and was prepared to watch the show. An old man stared fixedly at the woman. "Miss, you broke a divine artifact of my divine armament pavilion. Aren't you going to give us an explanation?" The woman smiled. "How interesting. If it really was a divine artifact, then would it have been broken?" The old man's expression was calm. "No matter what, you must give my divine armament pavilion an explanation today." The woman smirked. "Are you sure you want to blackmail me? Let me tell you, my background isn't simple." The old man looked at the woman. "Is that so?" As he spoke, he waved his right hand, and 3 mortal severing realm elites appeared behind the woman. The woman suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Are you just going to watch me get bullied?" Yi Xian was speechless. So she had found out about him. Yi Xian walked up to the woman and smiled. "I didn't expect to see you here." The woman in front of him was none other than Dao Yi. Dao Yi. Yi Xian didn't expect to see her here. Dao Yi looked at Yi Xian. "If I said I'm here for you, would you believe me?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't." Dao Yi smiled and was about to speak when the old man suddenly looked at Yi Xian. "Are you trying to stand up for me?" Yi Xian looked at the old man and smiled. "I'm a reasonable person. You said my friend broke a divine artifact of your divine armament pavilion. May I know what divine artifact she broke?" The old man said indifferently. "What, you want compensation?" Yi Xian said seriously. "Of course. Isn't it only right and proper to compensate for the damage?" The old man looked at Yi Xian and opened his palm. In his hand was a pile of fragments that looked like a vase. The old man said, "This is an ancient divine vase, worth 100,000 eternal saint crystals. Since you're so polite, I'll give you a discount. 90,000 eternal saint crystals will do." 90,000 eternal saint crystals. Hearing this, some people shook their heads. That thing isn't even worth a single eternal saint crystal. It's clearly extortion. However, no one said anything because Yi Xian and Dao Yi were obviously from the outside world. Yi Xian glanced at the ancient divine vase and spoke seriously. "It really is a treasure." As he spoke, he turned around to look at Dao Yi. "You actually broke such a precious treasure. How careless of you." Dao Yi blinked. "Then what should we do?" Yi Xian turned around to look at the old man. "I think 90,000 eternal saint crystals is too little. How about I give you something to make up for it?" The old man gazed at Yi Xian. "What is it?" Yi Xian opened his palm, and spirit beginning appeared on his arm. "A divine rank eternal life spring." Someone exclaimed in surprise. It didn't take long for the expressions of everyone here to change. A divine rank eternal life spring. This young man actually has a divine rank eternal life spring with him. Everyone gazed at Yi Xian with terror.